When an artist begins to paint, they use an empty canvas like the one you see here. And canvases comes in all different sizes and shapes. Sometimes that empty canvas can be a billboard or a whiteboard, even an empty dinner plate. That's right, how you serve a plate of food is a work of art. And that's what we're going to learn here, how to create that canvas or open space where you can do your work. So let's go back to the starter page. Click on the Create New button. So with every project in Photoshop, we have to start by creating that space to work on. Whether we're creating a business card, brochure, ad banner, or meme, we need to determine the physical attributes such as the height, width, and resolution of the work we're about to create. And that's the purpose behind this New Documents page, to create that space for our work. These icons that you see here represents different presets of canvases that were created entering the values into this form you see here at the right side called the Preset Details section. And as you can see, the icons look pretty much the same. The difference is the information beneath the icons. Now you may have different numbers on your screen, but they all list the width, the height, and the resolution. The first icon you see here, the width and the height are both 2000 pixels. The resolution is 72 ppi or pixels per inch, and I'll go over the meaning behind all these numbers shortly. So why use icons? For many years, graphic artists like myself, if we needed to create a canvas for a specific project, we would have to enter the values on the Preset Details section each and every time we started that new project. Well, that's not the case anymore. We enter the value of the canvas at the Preset Details section, and the information would be stored within these icons for later use. So now all I have to do is click on an icon and I get that canvas again. Go ahead and try that for yourself. Click on the first icon if there are any available on your screen. Otherwise, just simply watch. And when I finally open this canvas, I'll click on the menu under Image, Image Size, and a dialog box will appear showing me the dimensions of this canvas. And these dimensions match the information under the icon that we clicked. Let's go and close out on the document by clicking on the X on the upper left. As mentioned before, all these icons were initially created using the Preset Details section. Now the number values of this section changes whenever a preset icon is clicked, as I'll demonstrate here. If I click on this icon, a preset of 600 by 800 pixels at 144 ppi, notice that the data in the Preset Details section matches the values listed beneath that preset icon. You see that the width and height are 600 by 800 in pixels, and the resolution is 144 ppi. The first field prompts the user to enter the name of this document, and by default it says Untitled 1. Let's rename it to Standard Preset. The next set of fields has to do with the physical size of the document. In this field you enter the width, and below that you enter the height. Let's leave the values alone for now. I want to go over the drop-down menu to display the units of measurements. You have pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, and picas. And which one you choose pretty much depends on what you're creating. Points are units measuring the size of typography, font, letters, numbers. As you can see from this illustration, the larger the point value, the larger the letter. Picas are numbers representing the horizontal measurements of a column width used for designing newspapers and magazines. So this unit has more to do with Adobe InDesign rather than Photoshop. For these tutorials, we'll be sticking with pixels and inches. So for now, please select pixels. The next set of fields has to do with the physical size of the document. In this field, you enter the width and just below, the height. Let's enter 1175 for width and 900 for height and keep it in pixels. So now, what is a pixel? A pixel is the simplest unit of a monitor, and your monitor is made out of tiny dots running across those screen. Well, those tiny dots are pixels. The screen resolution of your computer is determined by how many of those tiny dots run across the monitor. Here is an illustration of both my monitors. The smaller monitor measures at 1280 by 800 pixels, and the larger goes up to 2560 by 1080 pixels. So in other words, my small computer 1280 pixels horizontally and 800 pixels vertically, while my larger one goes from 2560 horizontally and 1080 vertically, all in pixels. Then comes the question about handling large documents. If my screen resolution is only 1280 pixels across, how can it fit a document of 2000 pixels across? Here is a screenshot on how a 2000 by 2000 pixel document appears in Photoshop. If you look on the upper left of this document, you will see 33.3%. That's 33.3% of the original size of this document. So, in other words, if the document dimensions are larger than the computer's screen resolution, Photoshop shrinks the canvas for us to work on. An important attribute is the resolution. This measures how many pixels goes across within 1 inch of an image. Hence the term pixels per inch, or PPI. The higher the number, the more richer the color value. But before you decide to put large numbers under resolution, hear me out. That can actually get us in trouble. Which number you enter in resolution depends on what you're creating and how you plan on delivering that product. A resolution of 72 pixels per inch is used if the image is to remain on screen, like the images of a website. Even if you were to create a document of 300 pixels per inch, it will be viewed at 72 if it's left on screen. Now, if the output involves print material, like brochures and business cards and posters, it will require a much larger resolution because printing takes up heavy ink. I've created brochures and business cards with a resolution of 300 ppi. A poster can be as high as 600 ppi. But for on-screen only, and for these tutorials, let's keep the resolution at 72 and leave it at that. But be careful of how you enter numbers. A common mistake my students make is sometimes entering a larger number, like 1000 meant for pixels, but select inches instead. Imagine the strain it takes for a computer to open an image that's 1000 inches, or around 83 feet. Now, that's large. Now, graphic designers most likely create graphic elements using inches, since some of their products have standard dimensions. For instance, a brochure is typically 8 inches by 12 inches, business cards are typically 3.5 by 2, whereas web designers are more likely to use pixels because they're more concerned about how a website appears on a monitor. These icons here represent orientation. You should be familiar with orientations when you've set up pages like in Microsoft Word or Excel or even Google Docs. The first icon represents the portrait orientation, and portrait is a document in which the height is larger than the width. The one immediate to the right represents the landscape orientation, and landscape is a document in which the width is larger than the height. Here's an illustration that describes both orientations. Now in our case, the width is larger than the height, so that makes it a landscape orientation. If we selected portrait, notice the numbers. It's been switched. The width is now at 900 pixels and the height is at 1175. Let's return back to the landscape orientation. Please make sure the width is at 1175 and the height is at 900. Next, we have the Artboards checkbox. Let me show you a sample of what an artboard document looks like. Basically, it allows for several canvases for the user to work on simultaneously and can be saved as a single document. This works great when designing brochures that require several sections or the back and front of business cards. Please leave the Artboard checkbox unchecked. Now the color mode. And color mode has to do with color combinations based on the product that you want to create. There are three main color modes to focus on. RGB is the most widely used color mode, especially on websites and video. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. The other color mode is CYMK, combining cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. And this mode is mainly used for print products. That's why you see a lot of ink cartridges with these four colors. Then there's grayscale, which is primarily mostly black and white with several shades of gray imagery, and they really enhance photography. On the preset details, let's start off by selecting RGB. Bit depth refers to the color information stored in an image, and I'm not going to go too much into the detail, but in a nutshell, a value of an 8-bit graphic refers to a maximum of 256 colors. A 16-bit means 65,536 colors, and 34-bit means that image holds 16,777,215 colors. Now that's big. So the higher the number of bit depth, the more richer quality of a graphic. But you might be thinking that let's just choose 34-bit. Well, hold on now. The larger the bit size, the more difficulty it will be to export. And if we're going to be working primarily on the monitor, we don't need that high a number. 8-bit is good enough for these tutorials and for most projects. In fact, throughout my 25-year career, rarely do I go above 8-bit. So let's just keep it at 8-bit. I'll have more information about this on the notes for this section. Now for background content, on the drop-down, let's just select white for now. As you can see in this sample, the document will open up in a white background, and I'll eventually show you how you can change it later, but let's keep it at white. And for color profile and pics, there's too much for me to talk about. Let's just choose display. And for pixel aspect ratio, we'll use square fixes because a pixel is the same shape as a square. Now that we've entered the values into the canvas, we wish to create. And if we create, you will have the finished product. And lo and behold, you have your canvas where you can create your art just like the painters did at the beginning of this lesson. And we're ready to finally finish up this lesson by talking about how we can save this preset after all that we've covered. First of all, let's make sure everything is correct. You notice that the custom preset here, 1175 by 900 by 72 ppi, is exactly the preset that matches the details over here. Once again, let's make sure you have 1175 pixels by 900. We have the landscape orientation, 72 ppis, RGB. This needs to be white, and this last two will showcase display and square pixels. I believe we're ready to go ahead and save this. Okay, so this is a very good preset, gives you a lot of room to do some work, and I like to refer to this throughout these tutorials. Now, there is an icon here, an arrow going into an open box. I'd like for you to click on that, but at the same time, I'm going to ask you to highlight standard preset and copy it. So Command C if you're using a Mac, Control C if you're using Windows. Let's go ahead and click on this little icon here. And now you'll see that it'll take you to a different section called Save Document Preset. And where it says Saved One, let's go ahead and paste standard preset. And you'll notice once again all the dimensions we've entered before. And let's go ahead and click Save Preset. And the preset now appears if you look at the menu. Okay, normally we would be looking at recent menu, and I haven't been speaking about the menu yet, but here I have. So if I want that preset again, the standard preset, I click on Saved, and there it is right there. I double click, and it is right there again. So let's go back to where we were, create new, and click on the saved menu. There it is again. I had saved the 2000 by 2000 icon some time ago. These are templates, and while I'm in the mode of talking about the menu, all that you see here, from photo to print to art illustration over here, they're simply templates of work that was done previously that you can use. Okay, or there are other presets as you see over here. Notice that's the dimensions here. Some of them are 1920 by 1080 by 72. If you click on print, you'll notice that all these icons, these preset icons, end in 300 ppi. Alright, well I think that just about concludes this lesson. Hope you enjoyed. I know it was long. It's going to be the longest lesson that we have here in the Photoshop course, but it was well worth it because now you're fully informed of the graphic details involved in good photoshopping. And so let's go ahead and continue to the next lesson.